On episode 17 of Convergence, an update on my stand-up set, the latest on Godmode, and being the girl next door you didn't realise you wanted all along.
I had another EMDR session yesterday, and it was about this. I wanted to kind of reprogram and process some issues I have with talking with people on the phone. I don't like talking on the phone.
You're a millennial.
Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah, that's actually another factor I wasn't thinking about.
I say that not to be,
dismissive or anything.
Whatever,
I get it.
But it's a different expectation, and I go back and forth.
Yeah. For me, I was definitely more in the mindset of two things. One, I used to suffer from worse hearing loss than I have now. My hearing has gotten better since I've removed the mold, but I had really bad hearing loss, and so it was hard for me to just hear and not see. Like Zoom and this kind of stuff, video calls are a lot better for me because I can, not that I can read lips, but yeah, I can see more context.
You're getting context.
Exactly. And then the other factor, which came up through the EMDR processing, which kind of, it kind of makes connections of your past traumas and history and family stuff, was that when I was in middle school, I can't remember how much I talked about this last time, but I lived in a house in McMinnville with my dad, and my mom and my sister had moved out because they went to another town halfway to the big city, Portland, where my sister was going to school. And so they moved to a middle city between the two of us, but they didn't really come over very often. So it was really just me and my dad in the house. And it was an inordinately long house because it used to be an art gallery that we remodeled into a house. And so I was on one end and he was on the other end. And I was in middle school, so I didn't want anything to do with my parents anyway. But my dad was always kind of doing his own projects. And he never called on me. He wasn't really there and attentive and engaged. He was going through depression that he didn't want to acknowledge and a bunch of other stuff. And then my mom was gone and my sister were gone, and they didn't really call either. And I didn't have, obviously it was before cell phones. I didn't really have a Rolodex of all my friend in middle school's phone numbers. I didn't have phone calls modeled to me. My dad didn't even have any friends. My mom had a couple friends, but it wasn't a big thing to call people on the phone. I moved around. I was in that school for about 2 years prior to that, but then I'd moved around a bunch before that. And so all my previous friends kind of felt like a world away. And the friends I had right now were actually in a different city. They were all in Yamhill and I was in McMinnville. It was 10-minute drive away. So my close friends at the time felt a world away. And so I was just really isolated. And I think that really helped, that formulated this feeling for me of being very distant from kind of everybody. And anyways, I did a lot of processing on that, and it's a lot easier now. And so I reached out to a bunch of friends. I'm like, hey, do you want to have a call? I'm going to connect. And most of them said, yeah. One of them said no. And not in a bad way. They're just super busy. But yeah, so that's been going on for me. You're working on this stand-up course, and I really want to hear a check-in about it. What's going on with that? How's it been?
So, a couple of weeks ago, I took my set out of my brain and performed it in front of the class.
Amazing.
And one of the things that I realize is I'm an okay storyteller. I tell you what, there was an interesting moment where at the end, one of the people said, were you nervous because you look really confident or whatever? And my kind of reflex, and I actually did say, I was like, oh, terrified. And in the back of my mind, I was going, that's not actually true. You need to there was a little bit needing to self-deprecate, and need to help someone else feel comfortable, which that's fine. I don't mind doing it for that reason. If it helps someone else feel like, oh, this is, feel the fear and do it anyway kind of thing. But I don't want to deny actually the fact that, yeah, I was nervous, but like, it wasn't horrible. You know what I mean? So a couple of interesting things. Firstly, that like I said, I'm an okay storyteller. I'm a decent storyteller. I present okay. And
loving that self-deprecation. You're an excellent storyteller. But carry on.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for saying that. Thank you. Accept the compliment with grace. What's it? Brian Regan always does this very well. He's like, "Thank you, I appreciate that." There you go. So I can string a story together, and I was praised for my vulnerability, which again, fine. That is the brand.
Yeah.
Because I told a very embarrassing story. The two things occurred. One of them is I didn't put any real jokes in because my style of humor, the things that make me laugh, aren't necessarily. I mean, I love jokes. Jokes make me laugh, but like, I'm not a jokeman. I like not observations, but like, I like quirks of language. I like those kinds of things that read well, that are not necessarily, and it's the difference between humor and comedy. I think I'm humorous, but I'm not comedic. That's the one bit of the stand-up. The other bit of the stand-up, which was a really interesting revelation, is I do this whole bit, which I'm now going to cut from the set, which is an inner monologue with myself. So the story is about me trying to woo a bartender in a holiday place, like what we have here, a holiday camp. So it's like a bunch of chalets. People can rock up with a caravan or with a tent, and then there's activities, there's things you can do, and there's a clubhouse which has got a bar, and that's where entertainment. Like every night, there's entertainment that you can go and see. So I don't know if there's any kind of phenomenon like that in the US, but that's a thing. So like a holiday park, you go and there's some entertainment and fine. And there was a bartender there that I just, she was absolutely my type, thought she was gorgeous, and I don't know, I'd got it in my head that I was going to woo her. And so that's kind of the story, and it goes disastrously wrong because fine. And so, but it's quite sweet, and naive, and wholesome in its way. But I felt the need, and it wasn't until the course teacher came up, because it's basically you do your set, and then he'll come up, he'll ask the other participants if there's any feedback, any thoughts, and then he's made a load of notes. And one of his things was like this inner monologue. So I have this discussion where I'm basically justifying to the audience why I am allowed to woo this girl. I have such a, and I thought I'd got rid of the mental, if you will, mold from my brain of the perceived toxicity that I have as a human being, that I thought I needed to justify asking someone out. I thought I needed to not justify might be the wrong word. I needed to bring the audience on side. I needed them to be on my side because I had already internalized this idea that they would not be on my side because I wanted to ask out a girl that I'd not met before. And so I end up doing this inner monologue, this conversation between me and the other part of me, left brain, right brain, basically to justify to the audience to say, it's okay, I've got good intentions. Which kind of assumes that I'm going up and telling a story where I have bad intentions, which was not the case. And so he didn't bring any of that up, but he was just like, I don't really know why you're doing this in a monologue thing. And I was like, I know exactly why the fuck I'm doing it. And I should stop it. So that was interesting.
But that's wow, great self-observation, and that's fascinating.
So yeah, the two things I've taken so far is put more jokes in, and which hopefully that's something I can do. And then like maybe you don't have to justify your existence, and so that's kind of how it's going. So last week we learned we did a bit more sort of. I quite enjoyed it, actually. It was all taking an emotion and embiggening it as much as possible to make it nice and easily understood by the audience, so that like you can show rather than tell a certain thing. And so we all had we all came up and we had to pick out a card that had an emotion written on it, and the audience didn't know what the emotion was, so we had to read it, and then we tell a very, very simple joke. And we have to deliver this very, very simple joke in that particular emotion.
Oh, fun.
And it just so happened that I picked one of the hardest ones, and I was the first to go up. Yeah, I was the first to go up because I was like, this will be fun. And I ended up picking basically the hardest one to do, which was something like shameful. It wasn't shameful, but it was something like it.
Mm-hmm. Like you feel ashamed.
I had to deliver this joke in I was in a way that I was like ashamed, which was very challenging. But I got to have another go where I did a different emotion, and that landed a lot easier. And it's it's fun to play with that stuff, because then it helps you. It shows you actually like you need to go big with the stuff. You need to go big with the emotions, because big is funny, and over the top is funny. Someone really like someone being sad is not funny. Someone being so sad that they're like, especially about it being something that's small, that's so over proportion, like that's funny, and it's it's that kind of thing really. So I'll take some of that in, and I'm kind of thinking, I kind of think I want to go in big. Like I've been kind of like this maybe a little bit dialed back because I'm still a bit nervous and stuff, whereas I kind of like the idea of just like grab the mic and go, I'm going to tell you the story about a time that I tried to woo this woman and it was an absolute disaster. Who's with me? Like I kind of want to, I'm kind of thinking like, can I go that big and sustain that, and bring everybody along with me? And just make everything big. You don't seem to be fully on board with this story, right? What can I do to bring you on board? Like and really bang the drum, rather than be try and be sort of this. It would be quite nice to be like bah, because some of the bits of the story, like I'm using the hero's journey as a kind of a framework. And so I think going in with that kind of energy, but also with, some of the self-deprecation of like, I had absolutely no plan, Yeah. I think that kind of confidence mixed with the naivety and all that kind of stuff, I think could be quite fun. So, and it would be fun to like, one of the things that the guy's been like hammering home to us is, as far as you're concerned, when you get on stage, you are the funniest guy in the room. It's only until you prove them otherwise that then they start to, like, as far as they're concerned, you are the funniest guy. You've got all the jokes. You are the funny person. It's only then when you start getting maybe a little bit small, or you're like, oh God, I'm actually quite nervous. There's lots of these people. Like people then start to tense up because they're like, oh God, if they're nervous, oh God, this is going to be a train wreck. I'm going to be nervous. Whereas, if I can, and I kind of use the. Sorry, this is me just like exploring this just as we speak, but like,
please do.
If I can use the adrenaline that's coursing through me, and rather than push it inwards, as I think we often do when we perform, and then we shake and we get all this kind of stuff, actually push it outwards and go, okay, this is the big show, I'm on stage, and make it big. I think that could be quite a fun thing to do. And so I might experiment with that and see what happens.
I love that. A little thing that came to mind is like, That'd be excellent. I would love to see that. You really putting it out there. Stop hitting the microphone, Brendan. I love to see that you really putting it out there and being big and force not forcing it in a bad way, but projecting it. Yeah. And then like you don't have to use this at all, but it came to mind of like strategically using a little bit of just a little sampling here and there of really over exaggerated inwardness, and maybe if it was like kind of inappropriately used, like you shouldn't really be inward about this, or you can play around with that, but like
what I'm definitely thinking is it needs light and shade. Like it needs, as much as there's the big moments, because there's a couple of moments where like time kind of stands still and you need to get down. And like, there's a moment right at the end that I think I performed reasonably well when I did it last time. And it's like, this thing happens and you really have to communicate. Like, let's draw everyone in and we can have this. And then we can go back to big. But like, yeah, you absolutely need to.
And well, in that quiet moment, you can really punch home of something super funny if it's like really out of left field and like not expecting it. Yeah, that can be an excellent moment.
So yeah. I'm having fun. So that is that. The other thing that I think is helping with a lot of my thinking at the moment is a book. So I think we talked a couple of weeks ago. I've been mentioning this guy, Rory Sutherland. He is the vice chairman of Ogilvy UK. So Ogilvy is this huge multinational advertising agency. So Rory Sutherland is this vice chairman, whatever that means, and he wrote this book, and it's interesting. So one of the first examples he talks about is when we think about. So if you think about you want to create a new soft drink and you want it to rival Coke. So you're thinking it's got to be cheap. It's got to taste good, and it's got to be in a nice bright can, so that or nice big and in a big bottle, so it's like cheap, and you get lots of it, and it tastes nice. What would you say, like as a big soft drink brand that we can think about in the late 90s, early 2000s that has rivaled Coke?
I guess maybe like the energy drink craze of like Monster and Rockstar and Red Bull. So
Red Bull is expensive, comes in a tiny can, and everybody universal. And this was interesting. I thought this was just an opinion. No, everybody across the board says it tastes awful. Like apparently, like when this was market tested, people were like angry at how bad Red Bull tasted. And yet, it is as a brand. I mean, I don't drink Red Bull. I've almost never drunk Red Bull, apart from when it's been mixed in with vodka and something else. I don't think I've ever bought a can of the stuff, but it is a huge brand, and it's advertised all the time. They have a motorsport wing. They've thrown people out of rocket ships, not exactly, but so they've got their whole thing. Red Bull gives you wings and all that stuff. Huge brand. Tiny can, expensive, and tastes awful. And so it's lots of things like that. It's like so here we have HS2, which is this planned line that's going to cost something like £6 billion, might be more. I might even have got a decimal point off, but huge public expense. And it's basically to cut an hour off your journey time between London and Manchester, or London and Birmingham, or I guess Manchester and Birmingham, whatever. Because and so it's huge expense to build this really high speed rail network or line, and apparently Sutherland was or his company were consulted about this, and he was like, well, I could probably knock off the journey time by about 40 minutes, and it would cost you maybe £250,000. Do you want to do that? And they were like, no, because it probably won't work. And his whole thing was, it's all about perceived journey time. So what you usually do, if you want to go from Birmingham to London, you buy an advanced ticket. And so that only allows you to get on that specific train. And so you know that that's the case. You're then frightened of missing that train. So you rock up at the train station 45 minutes early, at which point 2 other trains have gone that could have carried you. And so he's like, well, what if you had an app where it allowed you to pay an extra $5 to jump on an earlier train, which could cut between 20 and 40 minutes off your whole journey time? And that's it's those kinds of weird ways of thinking. Like he asks the dumb questions, why do people not like standing on trains? And it's like, well, that's a stupid question. People don't like standing on trains because whatever. And he really digs into those questions and tries to come up with, and so there are, on one side, it's like using all this kind of psychology for evil because it's all advertising. But also I'm really fascinated by it. I'm really fascinated by like the science of human behavior and what makes people do things, because ultimately you and I are both in the business of wanting to move people from one, mode of thinking to another, in different scales. And so understanding more about where like resistance and objections come from, where they actually come from versus what people say, and what people buy and why people buy. Like another very, very quick example that I saw on TikTok yesterday, and it will probably end up in his book as well, because I think most of what I'm seeing on TikTok is talks that he's delivered that come from his book. He talked about, I think it was KFC in South Africa consulted him because their business, it just wasn't doing very well. And he said, have you tried putting your prices up? And they were like, no, we need to put our prices down. That's what we need to do so that we get more people in the door. But they tried putting the prices up and demand increased. Not just like they made more money, but like demand increased. And his thinking was, and what I liked about this, and some of the ways I'm trying to think about this stuff as well, it's like he didn't know that would happen, but he thought it might, and he thought it would be worth the experiment. And so his sort of post-rationalization was, I think it's because if you go for fast food, you either do it because it's cheap or it's a treat. And so if it falls in the middle, it's neither of those, and so you're not really compelled. So if it's super cheap, then you'll go for it because it's cheap. Where if it's a bit more expensive, you're like, I'm treating myself. So yeah, and one of the things, so I have made a potentially irrational purchase decision, and I'm not going to try and spend too much time post-rationalizing it, but there's something in me that's like, I don't know, but I think I want to go. I want to take a shot at a bit of alchemy, and so I've paid for a very expensive ad to run for a week in Pocket Casts. So I've paid for Overcast before, and I don't know what Marco's. It might not be down to Marco. It might be the market. It might be how users use the app. But it used to convert a lot more, like a lot more. You used to get a lot more subscribers for the amount of money that you spent. And I don't think that's because he's put the prices up. I think there's maybe some kind of behavioral change. Maybe more people have bought the app and so they don't see the ads. I don't know. But they don't convert anywhere near what they used to. But it is a way of goosing numbers a little bit. But I'm like, well, Overcast is kind of, it's nerds like us, and that's only going to get you so far.
Pocket Cast, that was like bought by NPR at one point, and
yeah, and then bought by the WordPress people now.
Okay, yeah.
And they've always been cross-platform, which is great. And so, big Android audience. And yeah, and it's actually not more expensive than Overcast per potential subscriber, but it's a lot more money because they are promising a lot more taps, and you pay for taps, I think. And so I'm justifying it because although I can't afford it now, at some point I will be able to afford it, and that'll be okay. And it's one of those where if you sit and you rationally work out the numbers, which I did, they don't make huge amounts of sense. Because it's like, it kind of costs you, and I asked ChatGPT about this because I was like, this can't be how the market operates. This can't be how podcast advertising operates. It costs about $20 to buy a subscriber. Because I was thinking, okay, that's probably because it's in line with like podcast advertising, but it's in podcast advertising, it's $10 per. You get roughly $20 per 1,000 listens. So for each person you recruit as a new listener, they would have to listen to 1,000 episodes in order for you to in order to break even.
Yeah.
So I was like, why do people do it then?
Well, you're adding ideally you're gonna I'm thinking theoretically, ideally you're going to get a new listener through this, and then they're going to expand the word of mouth market, and so maybe that one new subscriber gets a few more new subscribers because they're also telling their friends like, oh, I really like this podcast.
That's what I'm banking on, is a bit of alchemy. It's something, or it's they get in touch with me, because I want more, like I feed off the feedback from people, and it's been so wonderful that I've been able to actually use that, because when I post on social media, like no one comments on the episodes, because commenting on episodes is a nightmare, there is no proper mechanism for doing that. But if I post little clips to social media, people comment on those clips. And that's great. That's yum, 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 yum. I get to, talk about that, and it creates
dopamine.
This. Yeah, it is dopamine, but it's also creating it's teaching the listener that it's okay to that this is normal, that people are corresponding. It's starting to create, especially if I can just start referring to certain people just by forename, their first name, you start to create this sense of a community then. And I'm, that's very much, yes, please, that's what I'd like. And so, it's another potential way, like more listeners may mean more feedback, which, adds in itself and snowballs and all that kind of stuff. And so, that's kind of what I'm banking on, because if you do the numbers as everyone tells you to do, whenever it comes to advertising, they're all like, well, you've got to look at your ROI. You've got to look at, what's the average number that's going to convert to a paid customer, and then what is the cost per paid customer, and if your ROI is less than 1, then it's a bad investment. And I'm like, okay, that's all fine. That makes a lot of sense. But there's this voice in my head that's going, I think you should do it. There's just there's a voice in there that wants to, not for once, but I think for the first time in what feels like a while, to go, yeah, but what if we did though? You know what I mean? Instead of running every number, just go, yeah, but what if we did?
Mm-hmm. Experiment.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll learn something either way. So yeah, it's that is proving itself to be interesting. So that what's nice is I've scheduled it for when I hit episode 100, which is mid-April.
I love it. I love the analyzation of human behavior, trying to think outside the box, question everything. What are we doing? We're just in these modes, we're just in these mindsets, we're just in these habits and patterns, living unquestionably, just continuing to do the same thing, following the definition of insanity and expecting different results,
or picking a guru, or picking a funnel, not a funnel, but picking a pattern, picking a framework, and saying this is obviously the framework. Whereas, because so much of this, and it's like going back to the marketing thing we were talking about last week. So much of this is what works for you is great, and that might work for you, but it doesn't necessarily mean it works in every scenario. And I think there's a little bit I think it's interesting when we think about any kind of fitness plan or diet plan or anything like that. Like, you find the thing that works for you, and then that's the thing that you sell, which makes total sense because you're like, well, this worked for me, so this is the thing I want to sell. The danger, and I think this is where you've got your head screwed on with this, and you know, I'm sure it will come through in the messaging, is like, well, you correct me if I'm wrong, but like, I don't feel like you're saying that this is the thing for everyone. And I think that's sometimes the danger, is that with a lot of this stuff, you know, marketing, just basically telling people that you've got a thing, is this is the way you do it. You do the social media, which points people to the newsletter, and then the newsletter advertises the podcast, and then on the podcast you build trust, and it goes back to the newsletter. And you tweet so many times a day, and you use this formula, and you post on LinkedIn and you use this formula, and and that's all fine. And
it's exhausting.
It is, yes. Yes, there absolutely, and it is also, it's the problem again that, like, and I caught myself to such a degree that I almost felt like nauseous from this sense of pushing and grinding, and my brain got to a point where it was like I almost felt like I wanted to gip, like I just like. And I stopped myself, and I just thought it was a little bit more like my Howard Beale moment. I don't know if you've ever watched Network, but it's a phenomenal film. Basically, a man has a nervous breakdown live on air. He's a newscaster, and he says he's going to kill himself. And it's an incredible piece of satire. But that aside, yeah, I kind of think I had that moment of just like a something just, you know, almost like a mental embolism just went, and I just was, okay, I need to bring the silliness back. I need to take all of this thought leader energy that I've been so dangerously like close to, if not actually spouting it myself, and just go, okay, what happened if we just took this ball and just like put our thumb through it and just popped it out like the other side and just turned it inside out, but just like taking all of this definite, you are going to do this, it's all about my, yeah, and it's like, let's take all of that and let's just absolutely rip it to shreds and show it for what it is, and like with the purpose of kind of thinking like, everyone wants to tell you, like, they've got all this stuff that they want to tell you, and then they'll say, you got this. And it's okay to go, sometimes you don't, and it's all right, because I'm here on the days where you don't got this. And that's kind of the point of this. It's like being it's a mixture of like being the kind of Shakespearean fool character who's the only one who can say rude things to the king, and being the sidekick to the main character in the rom-com, who's like the one with the one-liners, or even the girl next door that you didn't realize the main hero actually wanted to be with all along. You know, after chasing all these other girls, actually that's probably the better metaphor. Is like the hunky hero of the movie, the high school jock or whatever, or not even the high school jock, but like the teen in the rom-com. It takes the whole film for him to realize that his quirky best friend, the girl next door, Anna Kendrick, perhaps, was actually the woman that he wanted to be with all along, kind of thing, after chasing after all of these beautiful girls that ended up being vacuous. I'm having a revelation as we speak. But that's kind of what it is. Like, and I kind of want to be, it's like, I'll be here when you like, when you've chased down all of these different authorities on how you're supposed to do your marketing. It's not even marketing, about how you're supposed to be a creative person. That's like how you're supposed to live and survive as a creative person. Follow all of those beautiful, like the waving of the hair, and they look gorgeous, and you want to follow them, and then you find out actually they're full of nonsense, or the stuff, or they just look at you and they're like mean girls. They're just like, oh no, this doesn't work for you. Like, that's a thing I've experienced sometimes. Like, people talk about these platforms that are available to loads of people. There's a great. Sorry if I'm going off on one here, but I'm excited. There's one of these newsletter platforms that, like, the promise of it sounds amazing. Of, you can advertise on newsletters that will fit your that kind of fit your niche, fit your area, and you only pay per subscriber. So you only pay when someone actually subscribes to your newsletter. Amazing. And so you see this beautiful, and I'm using gendered language. I hope you can go with it for now. You see this beautiful girl off in the distance, and it's like, oh, the dream weaver, all that plays. And then you have a conversation, and they turn round to you, or you tap them on the shoulder, and they turn around to you, and they're like, oh no, I'm not going to go out with you. Because it's like, you look at these platforms, and they're like, minimum buy-in is like $2,000 a month. And also there's a platform fee on top. And you're like, you sold this to me you sold this to me as a thing that was accessible. And it's only accessible to this top upper echelon. That ain't fair, because we're not all there. Most of us aren't there. And yeah, so it's all of that stuff that you can hear the animation in my voice, that just like, I want to be there. And I think there's probably a song or two or several about, like, the person who is kind of who's there for you when you've tried all of the pretty girls or whatever. There is this person waiting for you at home, kind of thing. And I kind of think I've just realized I'm the creative internet's girl next door. Yeah.
Speaking of inaccessible email marketing platforms,
yes,
I know there's been a few, like, early adopters. That's not the right word, but dear listener, if you have heard my many interjections of visiting entergodmode.co and putting in your name and email address to hear from me when it goes live, you may have noticed, you may not have noticed, that you didn't get an email confirmation that you signed up for an email newsletter. Not because I didn't do an email confirmation, that my email was something that could be used. So that error has now been fixed. And if you wanted to go back to entergodmode.co, put in your name and email, you will now get a confirmation that you are subscribed. So enjoy. There's not a lot coming at you right now. It's still something that I'm like, just a landing page to let people know when they want. When I have something to say, I will say it. I'm not going to overwhelm you with early stuff. That's what this is for.
But we're told, Brendan, we've got to send out at least one email a week, and it's got to be value packed. Brendan.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. I want it to be value packed, so I'm not gonna bullshit.
You have to show up, though, Brendan. You have to show up. Everybody tells me I have to show up.
Yeah, and
I can confirm. I did get the confirmation email.
Oh, sweet. Well, perfect. It works.
I'm a subscriber.
Yeah, I've been trying to show up on the Insta, and I've got, I don't know, maybe like 12 or 15 posts on there so far. I've been doing it. It's kind of averaging out to be like 3 a week. And some of it's pretty fun. I feel like it's kind of like I do it when I get inspired to. So it's like I'm not forcing it. And I've got like sometimes I'll get an inspiration, or like a bunch of things will come up for me at one time, and I will just put them in my notes. I'm like, okay, I'll save these instas for later, things that I want to talk about and expand on and stuff. And it's fun making a little graphic and being like, here's the short pithy thing, and then filling in the description with like, okay, what do I actually mean by this thing or that thing, and so that's fun. But I don't feel super called to do it often. And there's been a bit of like kind of like justifying that to myself, but also it feels good. I need to do. I definitely need to do it in a way that's sustainable for me. And I honestly don't really think that anybody cares. I mean, like cares about whether I do it every day. Another big part of it is like, so I don't have much. I don't have what I like as my branding coating, like the font choice, the color choice, like all of this is still, it's very like, I'll just pick something that looks nice and then kind of work with it, and not like I want to have something that's a bit more cohesive, that is a present on the website and the socials and everything. That has a nice look, a unified look, and I don't have that developed yet. And so I feel a bit like, yeah, I'm working on doing these things, but it all might be wiped out. I might just clear the decks and start fresh once I find that look that I really actually want. I don't know. Maybe I'll just keep it. But one thing I've really enjoyed about my process so far of developing Godmode is how much I have communicated and kind of worked with people around me, tapped on my friend circle and the people around me. So I have a videographer and photographer lined up, and they're a good friend of mine who it was really great. We kind of helped each other at our wedding. We both got married in the past 2 years, and we kind of helped each other with photography at our weddings. We hired a photographer and videographer, obviously, for our wedding, and I knew that they was going to take some time before we'd get the photos back. And of course, there was instruction of like, attendees, don't be on your phones. We just want you present for the moment and stuff. But I have a good friend, Jeff, who he's a great photographer, and I just like handed him my phone. I didn't need my phone for the whole day anyway. I'm not going to be on my phone on my wedding day. So I handed him my phone. I was like, hey man, just take some candid pictures. Like just it'd be nice. At the end of the day, I get my phone back, and then we just get to explore a few instant photos of the day just on our phone. And it was a beautiful moment that night, because Margaret didn't know that I had asked him to do that. And so we got to share some instant photos at the end of the day. And it was just such a gift. It was really wonderful. And then his wedding was like a year later. And he had 2 iPads and an iPhone set up at different angles of the ceremony, and like they hired a photographer, not a videographer. And so like he had me run to each of the things and had me turn them on at the right time. And one of them was not only a video but also a live stream, so that some people that couldn't make it could also watch it. And it was great because he was like, I don't know how to get the video going and the live stream going on the same device. And I was like, just do a screen record. And so we got the screen record going, and that worked out really well. And then we were able to put together a nice wedding video for the whole thing. And so it was really great that we got a exchange of usefulness there. And then now he's launching a new version of his photography business. He's kind of starting from scratch as a new company with his wife, and they're working together, and they kind of want to get into the area of videography for programs, for businesses that want to make courses and that kind of thing. And they're like excited about that field. And I'm coming in with some great knowledge and no real experience for videography. I don't have a budget to hire a videographer. And he could really use a lot of this advice, and he's really excited about what I'm telling him. So we're giving an exchange of coaching for videography, and we're just gonna.
Nice.
I know. I'm so thrilled about it. We're planning on doing like a weekend camping trip at some point, and doing a bunch of preliminary video work and headshots and stuff out in the wilderness and we got some cool ideas going, and I'm really excited for all that. And it's just like, it's a and then you and me, obviously, we got this common trajectory going, and I'm able to hammer out a bunch of ideas and get great feedback from you, and vice versa. And like that's been just vital and incredible and amazing. And then I've got a friend, bringing it back to the reason why I got into this, talking about this, is I have a friend who, we're not super close, but it was one of Margaret's friends, and he's a great guy. And we've played Magic the Gathering a couple times, and he's a graphic designer for a video game company. And honestly, he's a prime candidate for what I'm marketing. So I haven't talked to him yet about whether he wants to do an exchange as well. But like, if he does, like, getting some advice and getting some guidance on how to make this look video gamey and appealing to not just gamers, but kind of broader, and what elements to tie in, and how that's all going to work, what color palette, and Jeff is going to be great with the color palette as well for the photography side of things. So incorporating us and just like tapping on my local resources. And I'm just really excited about that. It also ties into the how to start, getting your core group of advisors going, because that feels really great as well. And just, I'm just so excited.
Yes. It's going to be an exciting year. With that, I have a biryani that I am anxious to get into. This has been, as ever, wonderful, and I got all excited and everything. It's animated. It's good. I love it. Thank you.
Thank you as well. And as always, correct me if I'm wrong. We get a snow cone after the game.
Yep.
Grape.
Good eye, Brian.
Good eye. Good torso.
Oh, you too, in case you ever fly someday.
So when's that baby due?
Baby! Ah!
The panda at the zoo. That's working on Pohanics. Oh no, hooked on Pohanics. Working for me. Me.
I call this desk. Yes, we all do, Brian.